Instructor Alan Crockett, and I'm going to show you a few techniques I use for doing collage. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get a background layer, and that can be any photograph you can have or found on the web or whatever. It's a good idea. One thing we need to talk about is to check the image of your photograph, image size. And you can go to image and go to image size, and it'll tell you how big your image is. And that's kind of important to figure out, because if you have sampled something from the internet, you might have a really small image, and in order to print something, you want it to be about 300 resolution. And if you take off the resampling and you go 300, you'll see this will print really good at about 4 inches by 4 inches, which is not great for some giant piece that you're after. 72 is, that's your computer screen. And if you want to get away with something around 200, will still print okay. So anyways, it's good to take a look at that. A good rule of thumb is about 2,000 pixels is a good image size. So first, find your image. Try to find something. If you look at them online, you can see what the image sizes are. Try to find something that's at least around this size, around 300 at 4 by 5, if you want to get a decent size image. And then I went about colorizing mine, and that's a whole other assignment we're going to do at a different point of colorizing black and white photos. I find it's really interesting and fun, and like a lot of these things, there's great tutorials on YouTube for doing a lot of these things. And once you get confident with following stuff step by step, you're gonna really be able to shoot ahead and learn all kinds of things. And believe it or not, you'll spend hours doing stuff. It'll take a long time. So I'm not going to show you the whole works of it. But find your image, make it the way you want, whether it's image, adjust. You can do hue, saturation, color balance, all these things. Play with them. Try them out. Vibrance, move the dials around. See what happens. So once you get your image and you've played around with it a little bit, I'm going to show you how to select things. I've been really into fish for a long time, and so I work fisheries for the Forest Service, and so I get a lot of chances to take photographs of fish. And I encourage you to take your own photographs when you can. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff online, but there's nothing like using your own photograph. You don't have to worry about copyright, any of that stuff. So find an image you like. And in this case, I found this pretty clear picture of a steelhead. And I recommend, if you have a big picture like that with a whole bunch of stuff, it's nice to just go in and crop the part you really want to work with. And once you crop it, you can just hit the check mark. And in order to zoom to the full screen, if you hit Command or Control and 0, it'll take it all the way up to the full screen again. That's a great keyboard shortcut trick. It's a nice thing to adjust the color the way you want it. If you go to image and adjustments, you can go in here and do different color things. You can also just jump to auto color balancing, which a lot of these automatic things are getting better and better and better. And believe me, I've spent a lot of time adjusting color and just done the auto one, and it looks almost better than my adjustments. If you do, right when you do it, you get this option to fade auto color if you go to edit. And you can actually see what happens with no auto color by changing the opacity of that effect, right? So you can kind of change it a little bit, see what it looks like a little bit. And maybe you actually kind of want some of that yellow that it took out, so you can kind of dial it into something that looks kind of where you want to have it. And so that's a really part of your own individual preferences for the situation. It's a great moment to be able to play with it right off the bat. So I'm going to show you one of the easiest new tools on this thing. It's called the Object Selection tool. And basically, all you got to do is you draw a rectangle around what you want to select, right? And let the machine do all the work for you. And you can see here, if we zoom in by pushing the Command and the plus key, you can see it missed a lot of spots. and it also did spots that it shouldn't have, you know, kind of this whole rock over here. So you're going to have to do a little more work. What I recommend doing is going to select and mask up here on the top. Hit that button, and what it'll do, your thing might be set differently, but you have these different kinds of views. You can, I'll move it here. You can view it as onion skin, which will just kind of make this little grid over the background, or you can view it as a selection or an overlay. You can see it on black, on white, and in pure black and white. You can kind of, you know, all these things people use in order to get a better selection. I tend to like the red, and right now it's set at 82%. I would probably bring it back to where you can kind of see the image a little better. Definitely you might not want red if you're selecting something red, so you can change the color to whatever you want. But in this case, since it's so green, it's kind of a nice color to use, so I'm going to stick with the original red. So what you're going to do is you're going to use, these different tools for selecting. If you hover over them, it'll tell you what they are. The quick selection tool, and also tell you the keyboard shortcuts. If you hit a W, that goes to that one. This is the refine edge brush tool, and this is the plane brush tool, etc. So first we're going to use the quick selection tool. Now if you want to use the quick selection tool, the best way to approach it is to start, you want to make sure you're on plus, and you want to start with a fairly reasonable size brush, not too big, not too small, and you want to start in the thing that's already been selected and then drag and push out into the area you want to select. And you can see it selected a little too much here. We'll clean that up in a little bit, but you're going to click in here and then push out. Now if your brush is too big, a great way to make it smaller is to find the bracket keys over near the P, and the bracket on the left side will make it get smaller, and the bracket on the right side will make it get bigger. And so it's a really nice way to adjust it. And so if you hear the computer right now humming, right, it's because the computer works really hard when it's doing this selection thing. It's kind of interesting. So if I'm adding, I want to make sure I'm on that plus sign. Now, if I want to subtract, like over in here, I'm going to hit the Alt key or the Option key on the Apple, and I'm going to just subtract a little bit, right? If you want to make your brush smaller, remember you can, over by the P is the brackets, and you can just kind of shrink it down. And hit the Alt Option, click it, see how it did a little too much? And you can go back in the nose here and just not hit the Alt, and that'll kind of bring it back. And I found, you know, at first I thought I had to click and drag, kind of basically draw things, but you can actually just kind of click on them and let the computer do the work. So you just kind of click and just let the computer figure it out. If you're dragging, you're going to do a lot more work. See there, it did too much, and so you can just kind of put it back a little bit. And it's kind of learning with you as you're doing it. So here, I'm going to click on here and kind of push out, push out. And people, really, this is a fairly simple selection. Some of these selections take a long time. See if it goes too far. You kind of click it back down, click it back down. There's another tool that is over here on the tool kit, and it's the brush tool, right? So the brush tool allows you to actually just draw a line. So I can just kind of click and drag a line in through here. But the problem with the brush tool sometimes is if you're not drawing accurately, you can just, oh, I'm not even using the brush tool. I don't know why I went back to that. Click on this, and then I'll show you the negative. Sometimes if it's not doing something you want, you can just go Control Z, and that'll undo what you just did. But I'm showing you the okay. So anyway, look how bumpy it is. If you want to clean this up, the polygonal lasso tool is a really good one for doing this. You click on it, and you, just like you did in the book assignment, you can kind of draw a line through here, right? And it'll add stuff along that line. And then you have to go back to your original and click on it, and you can see it added in. Now, the opposite is true. If I want to get rid of some of these bumps, I can hit the Alt key, and it turns into a negative sign if you look closely. And that allows me to take away stuff. See that? I can get rid of things. Now, tool is great for if you're doing like really fine stuff or you want a really clean, good line. See, you have to do that same thing where you move out and you connect your line, and then you'll watch it take a second and gone. So what I like about that is it's a real sharp, clean line. That's kind of a pretty thing sometimes. So let's make this a little smaller, this brush here, and you can change the kind of brush too. You can change the hardness and all these other things over here on the brush thing, which is kind of cool. And I'm just going to draw this cheek down here. For this assignment, don't worry about getting, so if I'm doing a brush too, I push the Alt, I can erase. Don't get too concerned with perfection here. That's the motto of this class, if anything, is just allow yourself the ability to, just play around and get some images. They can be a little sloppy. The real goal of this assignment is to see what you come up with in terms of mixing images together. What I kind of want you to remember is that in the old days, people basically just had scissors. And so what you're doing with this is way more refined than playing with scissors. So just feel good about that, and you'll get better and better at selecting stuff. And you can see the computer is definitely working hard. And I'm going to clean up this little edge real quick. But take your time and don't rush it. I'm rushing a little faster because I'm doing this demo, but I would just make sure you really clean it up good, because this is one of those moments that's like you've got the whole thing. So remember to go back to the full screen, Command 0, boom, goes back to the full screen. Look at it. Looks pretty good. When you're ready, you're going to see it's got this whole side over here. You can change the edge detection a little bit. You can play with these things, take a look at what they do. Sometimes they don't do anything for you. I've got it set to smooth things out. You can feather it, which will just kind of blur the edge a little bit. You can increase the contrast or decrease the contrast. You can shift the edge. This is a good tool because it will basically take it in from where it is, and that gets rid of a lot of ghosting and things like that. This is quite dramatic, and I'd say most of the time you don't want to go in too far. Just a little ways is probably good enough. And then you don't accidentally hit clear selection. You can decontaminate colors. Now, if the background really had some colors that are going to be different, this is a really good tool to change it. And then you can output to a new layer. See this right here, and you click OK. And you'll see over here, now you have a layer copy. It's a good idea to name it, and in this case it's Steelhead 1. And once you have this, you can copy it and paste it into your other thing that you have open. So the best way to copy and paste is go Command C, and that copies things. And then we're going to go over here to our building and use the move tool and click where you want it and go Command V, and it just usually kind of clicks in the middle. So anyways, here we go. We got a fish up here on the thing. The beauty of a layer is I can do things like change over here, change the opacity, make it very transparent. I can change the blending in different modes. Like multiply is neat because you can see the thing through it. It just basically darkens things. I can do a screen which lightens it. I mean, you play around with these things. You might want to play around with these things. But anyway, you can keep it normal. Okay, so you can do other things. Like if you go up to edit, you can transform things. You can change the scale. You can rotate it. You can warp it. You can flip it horizontally, which causes it to go the other direction. Anytime you do something you don't want, remember Command Z, flips it, takes it back. You can fix this lamprey mark on the back of it. You can go to image, adjust, and you can change the hue and saturation, make it more saturated if you want, or less. You can find the spot where it goes most with what your background looks like. You can change the hue of it if you want to make it a little redder, a little greener. You can say okay, and then you can go undo and get back to where you were. And then there's filters. You can blur it. The Gaussian blur is nice. You can see what happens if you blur it. If things are at a distance, it's kind of nice sometimes to blur them just a little bit so that they aren't as clear. If things are closer, you want them a little more clear. So experiment with all these different kinds of effects. There's all kinds of, there's this filter gallery, which is kind of interesting. If you go to that, it'll show you what these effects have on your piece and how that's going to change it. This is the rough pastels, which makes it kind of like a pastel. Some of these are kind of cheesy, and I recommend playing with them very lightly. So there's a lot of things there, and if you experiment around, I'm sure you'll figure out some nice things too. One nice thing to do is to have a bunch of layers that you can then import over into your other picture. So you just do the Command C, which copies it, and then move over to the one you're working on, and Command V, and that pastes it. And so you can have different layers. And you can, if you just click and drag, you can drag these layers into position. And I've got it show transform tools, and it will automatically go into what's called free transform, and that allows you to change the angle of it if you want, rotate it, and change the size if you want. So you can really make a lot of shifts right off the bat. And then you can also change the blending mode and all these other things. So I'm really curious to see what you guys come up with. Have fun, think about your subject, think about how all these things go together, and we'll talk again soon.